16 Years to Save the World Book 2 Audiobook Script Copyright 2026 Prologue The quiet before the turning. The world does not always end with fire. Sometimes it ends with a whisper, a single life pressed against the bars of a future they never chose. In the dim half-light of a forgotten cell, a young soul stands still. Eyes closed. Hands clasped. Not in surrender but in a vow. 16 years old. 16 years alive. 16 years to decide what the rest of the world will become. The walls around them speak of confinement. But the light on their face speaks of something else entirely, possibility. Because some stories begin in cages only so they can teach us what freedom truly means. Chapter 1 The Weight of a Number 16. It was a number that clung to the air like dust, light enough to float, heavy enough to choke. 16 years since the world had tilted off its axis. 16 years since the first warning signs were ignored. 16 years since a child was born into a promise they never agreed to keep. And now, 16 years until the world would end. Or be remade. The cell door groaned open, metal scraping against metal, a sound that had become a second heartbeat in this place. The young soul, no longer quite a child, not yet the adult the world demanded, opened their eyes. A guard stood in the doorway. Not cruel. Not kind. Just tired. The kind of tired that comes from watching history repeat itself too many times. Time, the guard said. The young soul nodded. They had known this moment was coming. The air had been different all morning, charged, restless, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. They stepped forward, bare feet touching cold concrete, and the guard led them down a corridor lined with flickering lights. Each bulb hummed with a faint, electric tremor, like a warning whispered through the wires. At the end of the hall waited a door unlike the others. Reinforced. Sealed. Marked with a symbol burned into the metal, a circle split by a single vertical line. The mark of the Council of the Last Horizon. The guard paused. You don't have to be afraid. I'm not, the young soul replied. And it was true. Fear had burned out of them long ago, replaced by something sharper. Something steadier. Purpose. The door slid open with a hiss. Inside, a long table stretched beneath a skylight that revealed a slice of grey morning. Around the table sat 12 figures, each draped in muted robes, each wearing a mask carved from polished stone. The Council. The ones who had watched the world crumble. The ones who had decided a single life could be shaped into a weapon or a salvation. The young soul stepped forward. A voice echoed from behind one of the masks. 16 years ago, you were born into a dying world. Another voice followed. 16 years from now, the world will face its final reckoning. A third voice, softer, almost mournful, and you, child of the turning, stand at the center of both. The young soul lifted their chin. I know why I'm here. Do you? The first voice asked. Because knowing is not the same as choosing. Silence settled over the room like dust. Then the eldest counselor rose, placing a small object on the table. A sphere. Smooth. Black. Pulsing faintly with inner light. The chronoseed. The device that could rewind, reshape, or erase entire timelines. The device that had cost the world everything. You have 16 years, the elder said, to learn what this is. To master it. To decide how the world ends, or how it begins again. The young soul stared at the sphere. It stared back. And in that moment, the weight of the number 16 shifted. It was no longer a countdown. It was a challenge. A promise. A beginning. Chapter 2 The monster in the glass. In every society, there comes a moment when the mask slips. Sometimes it's metaphorical. Sometimes it's carved from rubber and worn by a man who forgot he was human long before he put it on. The visitation room was supposed to be neutral ground. A place where families could see each other through glass, where hope could survive in small, fragile doses. But today, the glass reflected something else entirely. A guard in a demonic mask. Two visitors frozen in disbelief. A prisoner staring at the floor, as if afraid to look up and confirm what he already knew, that the system meant to protect him had become the thing he feared most. This wasn't fiction. This wasn't myth. This was the world as it is, a world where institutions grow monstrous not because of the people inside them, but because of the power they wield without accountability. And yet, even monsters can change. Marcus Hale felt the weight of the mask pressing into his skin. Not physically, emotionally. Spiritually. As if the thing had fused to him the moment he stepped into the room. He saw the visitor's eyes. He saw the prisoner's flinch. He saw himself reflected in the glass, distorted, grotesque, unrecognizable. And for the first time in years, he felt something he thought he'd lost. Shame. Not the kind that destroys. The kind that awakens. He lifted the mask slowly, hands trembling, and set it on the counter. The room exhaled. The visitors leaned closer. The prisoner finally looked up. And Marcus, a man who had spent years hiding behind rules, routines, and the armor of authority, felt the first crack in the wall he'd built around himself. A crack wide enough for light to enter. Chapter 3. Real life breaks the narrative across the country. Stories like this were becoming headlines. A guard loses his temper. A detainee dies in custody. A protest erupts outside a courthouse. A video goes viral. A community fractures. A family grieves. A nation argues. People said the system was broken. Others said it was working exactly as designed. But inside the visitation room, none of that mattered. What mattered was the look in the visitor's eyes: fear, confusion, anger, all tangled together. What mattered was the realization hitting Marcus like a blow: he had become the embodiment of everything they distrusted. Not because he was cruel. Not because he was corrupt. But because he was the one standing on the other side of the glass. And the glass was enough. Chapter 4. The child of the turning. Far from the visitation room, in a quiet corner of the world, the child who had been given 16 years to save the world felt the shift. They didn't know Marcus Hale. They didn't know the visitors. They didn't know the prisoner behind the glass. But they felt the moment the mask came off. Because the chronoseed, the device that connected timelines, choices, and consequences, pulsed with new energy. A small act of humanity had altered the trajectory of a future that was already fragile. The child opened their eyes. 16 years to save the world. 16 years to understand it. 16 years to decide what it deserved to become. And now, a new thread had entered the tapestry, a thread woven from real life, real pain, real awakening. The world wasn't saved by heroes. It was saved by moments. Moments like a guard removing a mask. Moments like a visitor refusing to look away. Moments like a child stepping into their destiny. The story was no longer myth alone. It was real. It was happening. And it was only beginning.